Hello, welcome to this new video on the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, a collection of teachings and spiritual awakening. Today we will see two verses. First one is 127. Yat avedyaṃ, yad agrāhyaṃ, yat chūnyaṃ, yad abhāvagam. Tat sarvam bhairavam bhāvyaṃ, tadante bodhasambhavaḥ. What yat avedyaṃ, what cannot be known, yat agrāhyaṃ, what cannot be grasped, yat chūnyaṃ, what is empty, yat abhāvagam, what is uncreated, what never appears objectively as an object, tat sarvam, all that, bhairavam bhavyam, should be realized, should be felt, should be realized as being divine. Tadante, at the end of that meditation, bodhasambhavaḥ, awakening arises. Awakening, awareness arises. So here it is said that consciousness, which is the divine, is what never becomes an object, something with limits in space and time, with a form, outside or inside, so-called real or just imagination. The divine is what never becomes like that. So that should be realized as being the divine. And here the commentator quotes a number of sources. Probably the first one is Buddhist, but the point he tries to make in his commentary, which is relevant for us, he tries to show that the emptiness, yat chūnyaṃ, that which is void, here is not like the Buddhist emptiness, and because the Buddhist emptiness is mainly a concept of things being dependent of one another, which is not the point here, and it is neither a state devoid of objects, and it is not a state devoid of activity, devoid of power, devoid of movements, because such a state is just one of the manifestations of consciousness. It has nothing to do with consciousness. Like deep sleep, it is a state of consciousness, a state of self-forgetfulness manifested by consciousness, but it is not consciousness. And here what is pointed out in the verse is consciousness. So when it is said that consciousness is empty, it's not the same meaning as in saying that that room is empty of furniture, or that place is empty of people, or deep sleep is empty of thoughts and activities, or death is empty of everything. Here it rather means that consciousness is empty in the sense that it is free of all objects and it has the power to create all objects. It is free in the sense that it has no limits. So to say that consciousness is free means that consciousness, to say that consciousness is empty, means that consciousness is free, is independent, and creates everything without the need for any material or instruments. And he quotes a very interesting text, the Vimarsha Deepika, text, non-dual Shaiva text, making precisely that point, because he says that the śūnye dharma, Shivakyam, called Shiva, that is the word empty when it is applied to Shiva in the context of Shaivism, means swatantram paripurnam cha. It means that divine reality, that divine one, Shiva, which is both completely full and absolutely free. So it's the opposite of emptiness in a negative sense. Here, emptiness just means that it has no limits. So it means that it's just free. So śūnyaṃ is a synonym of swatantram, independent, free, nothing else. It is that on which all states of consciousness depend. Tattvāni yatra liyanti yasmat samudayanti cha. It is that in which they dissolve away everything, all the states, and that from which they arise. So it's a way to say that everything depends on consciousness and nothing, and consciousness depends on nothing. So consciousness is free, is independent, whereas nothing else is independent because everything depends on consciousness. So that quote is also saying that in other philosophies, when we speak of emptiness, it's not the same meaning. Probably he's alluding to Buddhism, but not necessarily Buddhism, not only Buddhism, can be also Nyaya. Nyaya, who had a quite peculiar view of liberation consisting in nothingness. According to Nyaya school, liberation means to get rid of consciousness, because to get rid of consciousness is the only way to get rid of suffering. And he quotes a line from the Pratyabhijna of Baldev, Sas Pratta Mahasatta Desha Kala Visheshini. So it is just not just a negative entity, not just an absence, it's a presence, Mahasatta. It's the presence that makes everything present, and it's more than a presence, it's an action. Satta, Mahasatta, it's an action, it's the action of being, it's the act of being. It's not just static being like in Vedanta. It's not just like kūtastha, like not moving, like a stone or like a huge piece of iron. But he quotes as well from the Taittiriya Upanishad, which is part of the Vedanta corpus, because according to Kashmir Shaivism, its own philosophy of Kashmir Shaivism is the real import, the real meaning of the Upanishads. So there we have a quote of the Taittiriya Upanishad, very famous, Yato vacho nivrattanti aprapya manasa saha. That from which the words cannot reach along with the mind. Anandam brahmano vidvan nabibeti kutashtana. This is the bliss of the absolute, knowing which one is not any longer afraid of anything. Na tatra suryu bhati na chandra tarakam. There the sun does not shine, the moon, the North Pole. Nema vidyuto bhanti kuto ayamagnihi. Where there is no fire and no lightning. Tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam. When that shines, when consciousness shines, everything shines. That means that everything depends on consciousness. And that passage from the Taittiriya is very much in line with Pratyabhijna philosophy, with what Pratyabhijna philosophy says about consciousness, about awareness, being the Lord, being the mistress of everything. Everything depends on her. She does not depend on anything, on anyone. Tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam tasya bhasa sarvamidam vibhati. It is by that light that everything shines. And he adds, Anandat khalu imani bhutani jayante anand. All those beings are born from bliss. They live by bliss, because consciousness is not just some kind of neutral light, it is bliss. So that's very important. So they are making here the point of the difference between Buddhist and Vedantic emptiness on the one hand and Tantric emptiness on the other hand. Tantric emptiness is bliss. It's nothing negative, actually. It's a negative way of describing something which is absolutely positive, bliss, full, freedom, creativity, an action, the act of being, the action of existing, self-creation. The second verse, 120, 8. Nitye nirāśraye śūnye vyāpake kalanojjhite bhahyākāśe manaḥ kṛtvā nirākāśaṃ samāviśet. One should put one's attention, or make one's attention, manaḥ kṛtvā, into the outer space, which is eternal, without support, empty, all-pervading, and devoid of measures and divisions, parts. And like that, samāviśet, one will get completely absorbed, nirākāśaṃ, into that which is beyond space. So here they are making another very important point, is the comparison between space and consciousness. They have many points in common that are pointed out here in the first line, nitye nirāśraye śūnye vyāpake kalanojjhite. Consciousness, like space, is eternal, infinite, without support, empty of any inherent form or structure, all pervasive, all pervading. But there is a difference in that space is not conscious. So the essential feature of consciousness is absent in space. Space is in a sense the opposite of consciousness, because it's all pervasive, but it's devoid of, it's inert, it's devoid of power. So still, by contemplating space and throwing one's attention, one's gaze into outer space, like in the empty sky, or a huge large valley, or on the sea, attention opens up, and one gets completely dissolved away, one becomes absorbed into the space of consciousness, nirākāśe, in that which is the space beyond space, the space without space, the space without the inertia of space, of outer space, into the conscious, the aware space. So here's another example of that way of meditating, where one just throws one's gaze, one's attention, therefore, into outer space, and attention completely opens itself, and open attention is universal consciousness. So that's it for today. Thank you for listening, and see you next time. Have a good day.